Today we interview Miguel Fernández Alcalde, president of the healthcare business of Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany, in the US and Canada.
Miguel, could you briefly describe the first project you were working about AI, data, detail, what challenges you faced and how you're trying to solve them?
Yeah. So, look, I would say that this is give or take around 5 years ago. By then I was leading a global function. We internally called that one Global Business and Excellence and Innovation. And we had the idea that by then, again, 5 years ago, Gen AI could help us for some of the more tedious tasks but still that need some fine tune, like writing protocols for trials, especially the safety, the tolerability, and some other aspects of those trials, which are pretty consistent with the EMA and FDA, big regulatory agencies. So to an extent, you can use AI to go through every piece of medical information as well. And of course, then you have to fine tune, validate, and correct. But there are a big chunk of things that we do that could have been done, or by then could be done with AI, the AI that we got 5 years ago. And then we started also to think of, okay, what's the best way to approach our healthcare professionals, our physicians, with our promotional materials or non-promotional materials, scientific materials. Nacho, you're a doctor, and of course, every doctor is different. Every single human being is different. Some of you would like to receive, data in the evening. Some of you in the morning, through different channels with different type of highlights, and to make that in a more personalized manner, in a much more automated manner, is not easy. You cannot have like 150 people in the medical department and marketing department of any country to tailor those messages to the healthcare professionals. So we automated a lot of those stuff with, again, 5 years ago, AI. And also everything that goes related with that, because again, you need to create that material for Dr. Medrano, then you need to approve that material with our internal processes, medical, legal, regulatory, and then disseminate that at the right time. So if you put all this journey together, we use a lot of AI by then. Now we are doing that on steroids, but that was when we started 5 years ago.
That's very clear. How you are using AI to help researchers and medical doctors in this case. Is there anything regarding AI that you're using lately for this matter?
Yeah, and look, I guess that for that, there is like two worlds that are totally separated. One, maybe Europe, Latin America, and many other geographies, and then it's US. Because of the GDPR and how do we treat data in this country, personalized data, we can do much more things in this country, in the US, versus any other place in the world in terms of helping patients for this sake, because of the legislation that we have. So what we are doing right now is we are using in the US a lot of AI to help patients directly. I will not go into, we can have another podcast on how the US insurance and patient journey operates. Is very complex. If you compare this patient journey versus any other one in the world, is way more complex. So basically, we wanted to make sure that the patient have an efficient manner of going to the physician and taking the medicines in their houses. And again, that may seem trivial, but it is not. So going through patient verification, prior authorization, insurance changes, copays, etc. We do have, as many of the companies in the US, dedicated teams to navigate this complexity and help patients. Now, there are some therapeutics area, not showing where you may have rare diseases, for example. I don't know, I'm making it up, 1,000 patients treated with your medicine in the US. So you can still handle 1,000 patients with, a small team of people on the other side of the phone, helping them to navigate this journey. When you are in other type of diseases like infertility, in where we have hundreds of thousands of patients, that scale up is not easy. So we are using AI in many angles, with companies that are supporting us, with third-party vendors and internal proprietary information to handle that. So you can think of companies and projects like Manifest, Authentics, and many other natural language processes to find these biomarkers, find these words, find these moments in the discussion with the patient and our teams in the office to have the trigger effect in, okay, now this is the way that you have to go. So it's like putting, a second brain to these guys to help them to navigate this conversation way faster and much more efficient. We have some data that before using this technology, all this human-to-human conversation before AI helping us usually benefit verifications, which is something very common in this space, used to take 24 hours. Now it takes between 2 and 3 hours. So we have cut that by more than 300%. And we have phone calls that usually were 100% recorded, and then going back through all those records with a dedicated team to see where the triggers were. Now we can do that in a much more simple manner with AI. Patient copay enrollments used to be 8 to 10 business days. Now it's between 5 to 10 minutes. And again, I'm talking about average for all our medications in the US. Annual verification bolus of patients completion. This is an exercise that happened at the beginning of the year, not so when people change plans. Usually between 1 and 3 months. Now it takes 2 weeks so that patients don't miss any medication. In some of our diseases, the return years and the duration of treatments have increased by not less than 15%. In other words, the adherence is better, and therefore they can enjoy the efficacy and of the treatment for a longer period of time. So again, a lot of data that is going into those calls that without AI we could not be able to leverage.
So we're seeing very specific manners in which you are pushing for digital transformation or digital transition, and it's a reality. But at the same time, even when everyone is aware that this is useful, we still see a gap, right? So what do you think is missing? What do you think is the biggest challenge for the health sector not to finally catch up with other sectors in terms of using data and AI?
Look, I would say that first of all, the only thing that I've spoken to you about, and maybe we can talk about that later. The only thing that we have spoken about so far is this last part of the journey of the medicines. We will, again, maybe later, we can talk about the earlier phases on where AI is helping us, which is more the R&D, especially more in the R than even in the D. But definitely we have to catch up in many of the areas. And I guess that legislation is not helping us in general, Nacho. Of course, we are a sector that is extremely audited by different governments, wherever we operate. But at the same time, again, as you said, we have a super high stake in this patient journey as manufacturers and researchers and commercialization of all this medicine. So we definitely need to catch up faster. I would say that there are some bottlenecks that are a reality. And actually, I am experiencing from time to time in this country, where is my primary care physician, or can I have access to a specialist? And if I'm experiencing that, imagine people with less resources or less education. Definitely the need for more doctors is a reality. So many times when people think that AI is going to take jobs from them, in this particular case, in this bubble that we are now talking about, I guess that the only thing that is going to do is to ease the pain of the healthcare professionals like you and many others that are totally overblown by the level of expectations that they are supposed to deliver to patients, because again, the offer is not catching up with the demand by any means, and it will not, because you don't generate a doctor in less than 10 or 12 years by any means, and you do the math. We are going to on having a shortage of physicians for many, many years to come. So AI is definitely something that should help that that part. Now, we as manufacturers also needs to make sure that we have other ideas like hybrid drugs that we can talk about later. You know, using technology to support the, as I said before, the adherence and many other aspects of the medications. And I think that we are making great strides, but of course, there is always more things to do.
Yeah, and you just touched on something that is of high interest, I would say, for me and for most people listening to this podcast, which is how when we talk about integrating AI in healthcare management, and if we go specifically to pharma, this concept that you just mentioned of hybrid drugs, what it means in reality, how far are we from that being a fact, being something we can touch, and how you think that's going to affect us?
So look, I guess that the first thing that we have to do with AI in our world, in the healthcare world, is something that is extremely relevant, maybe even more than in other type of AI uses, which is you know, making sure that the bias and the transparency towards the benefit of that, whether it's patient, healthcare professional, or companies, is as clear as possible. In other words, the black box of how you meaning the algorithm decide going left or going right is as clear as possible. And first of all, you are an expert in that part. It's not easy, but it will give a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of adherence and a lot of predication to the people that want to use this more. Because again, trust is key. So to have as much data as possible, inclusive data, so that the AI algorithms can be trained, and therefore later educate everybody, upskill everybody, healthcare professionals, people in companies like mine, and policymakers, so that we can have that equitable access is key. Okay, so you cannot have a hybrid drug, or you cannot have any use of AI in our world without that level of transparency. Remove the bias as much as possible. There is most likely no way of removing all biases, because we, by definition, are humans with bias. But definitely, we need to make sure that this medicine with an AI enhancements is performed broader, but also you know, in the right way. We are still working, so I cannot comment more in that. We are still working on FDA on how those will look like. But let me tell you that the reality is that there is data. First of all, we are not pioneering here, okay? We are just following other steps that companies have had. And we just need to make sure that once we have FDA approval, and therefore later EMA approval, as I said before, the willingness from the healthcare professional ecosystem to use those hybrid drugs is high. Otherwise, we are just failing. We are just going to put something on the market that will be used by 5 people, and that will not help patients. So that education, upskilling, and transparency with healthcare professionals is something that is as relevant as the regulation that we are going through in the next months. But again, it's not rocket science. Of course, you are not going to change the first, second, and third phases that you have to go through. But the data that we have so far is that it enhances, especially sometimes in an amazing way, the efficacy of one of those drugs, just because of what are the habits that you have to take while you take the medicine. So, and in many other cases, actually, it enhanced the primary endpoint of the phase 3 trial, registrational trial. So I don't think that we are by any means far away, Nacho. I think that we just need to make sure that the adoption is higher once that is available. And also, for me, the best way to do that is to co-create that with the societies, medical societies, because the physicians are the ones that really understand the disease better than anyone. So creating that hybrid medicine with them is much more effective than doing on your own. So in other words, it's not one more app. So for the ones that are listening, it's not one more app saying, okay, I download my app and therefore EMD Serono, and then you push down my throat all the promotional aspect of the drug. No, it's nothing like that. It's like FDA/EMA clear application that will enhance whether it's efficacy or decrease the side effects of the product by doing some sort of practices in your daily life, validated with science and the right level of data. So that is where we are. Many other companies are there. Again, from my point of view, that is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is then massive adoption.
Yeah, for me, this is extremely interesting that we're now, as a matter of fact, talking about this idea of having actually two drugs already ongoing or in conversations. And as you mentioned, you're not the first company doing it. So other innovative companies are also getting into this world. So for us interested in AI for some time, we used to say, to claim something similar to the idea that in the near future, which is probably now the present, it wouldn't be just about drugs, but it would be about a package. That's the way we used to say it, a package where you get a drug and an algorithm that tells you when to use the drug. I remember to be saying that with my colleagues in California back in 2014. And it's interesting to see how things have been evolving. And it looks like we start to touch this. Do you think that is the way that pharma is going to look like in the next years? This combination of predictive precision medicine, algorithmic approach to what biology can do?
I would say, Nacho, again, in the R&D piece of the equation, which from my point of view is where the real magic happen. The real magic happen when you discover whether it's a new mode of action, a new pathway, or a new receptor that can help patients. And then you have something that validates through the phase 1s, 2s, and 3s, or registrational trials as such. Could be that you have a registrational trial with a phase 2b. But definitely AI is helping in that end now, and it's helping a lot. Now, there are some people that are way more illustrated than I am in this world, founders of companies. And the other day I went across a post of one of those people that I follow, and he said something like, look, the companies that have dumped millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on that quest of AI for the sake of AI will solve all of our health issues are the big technology companies, and they have realized that just data will not solve the issue. You need data, you need AI, and then you need the experts in R&D to put that on the serve of the patients. And then beautiful thing happens. But it's not just by having lots of data and a beautiful one of the big 3 or 4 AI tools that we have now in the market that otherwise they would have already been discovering drugs. So why companies like, I will not name them, but the big ones have not discovered yet medicines as manufacturers have done for many, many years? Because they need this type of experts. But in reality is that I feel that there is absolutely no molecule from now onwards that is not going to reach our bodies without AI use by any means. Like there is always going to be one step in the discovery of a product that is powered or enhanced by AI as of today. So I don't think that there is any new molecular entity, biological entity entering into FDA hands without AI being used in one part of the discovery of that tool, of that molecule. I don't think so. I think that in our case, and in many other cases that I know, AI is being used for some part of that discovery. Finding patients in trials, I guess that you have experienced that in your professional life. It's extremely tricky to find the right patients for the trials. In that part of the world, Nacho, the fact that you have AI identifying the right patients that will or should go through your trial is outstanding. So the large language model, and we are using that for our own now, can identify with a lot of precision how a patient look like in your consultant. And the fact that we are now going to physicians telling them, look, doctor, you have a patient that looks like this one. You just need to find that patient out, but this is the profile of the patient. this is the patient that should be in this medicine. And it's not based on our intent of selling more, is based on all this type of data. That creates a lot of respect from the medical perspective. And again, you find patients faster, especially for some rare diseases. This is extremely useful. And that's, again, especially for phase 2s and phase 3 trials, this is very, very good, because you accelerate the inclusion of criteria of those patients by a lot. So in other words, R&D and AI now is one same equation. Now, to your point, this is already a reality. Can we do it better? Yes. Do I foresee in the next 15, 20 years a world where AI by itself will discover medicines without any human intervention and any? I don't think so, but I don't know. Now, in terms of hybrid medicines or in terms of packages, I think that yes, the answer is, and regulators understand today that you can have, and actually FDA is going into that way. You can have, instead of 2 phase 3 trials that pretty much the only thing that give you is more N in the trial, because these are exactly 2 parallel trials with same endpoint, same everything. You can do it with one trial. And again, we are not going to speak about Bayesian statistics, but with one trial, you can still mimic the other arm without the need of expending hundreds of millions and a lot of more time. And AI play a big role in that one. There are many other areas in where FDA is also pushing forward with using AI and mimic a potential synthetic arm. AI right now is working, I would say, at 1% of its capacity to make sure that we have, FDA is, for example, FDA is the only regulatory body in the world that have individual patients data. EMA, when we submit data to EMA, all that data is aggregated, is consolidated. So we don't have the data of Miguel or Nacho isolated to EMA. To FDA, we have to. So in other words, FDA have for the last, 25 years, millions and millions of patient data that have been included into those clinical trials. And definitely we can create synthetic arms for new indications or for same indications with other drugs that will help us to cut by 50, 60% the time of new inclusion for patients in other trials. AI is working on that, but still it's in its infancy. We can definitely multiply that synthetic arm AI usability, all that data to make sure that we don't need so many patients. And last but not least, and this may be the dream true, is a moment where we don't need any more animal models, and we can have a system that mimic all this preclinical data with animals, so we don't have to put animals into that level of suffering. And I don't think that is very far away, but I don't think that is going to happen in the next 3-4 years. But AI in this world, Nacho, is changing by days. And I think that in the next 10-15 years, you and I will be operating in a world in where we may not need, again, preclinical animals to be tested, because we'll have AI working on that end. We may have way less patient inclusion in the trials to have the same statistically significant data to approve medications. And last but not least, is hybrid medicines to ensure that you have the medicine that you deserve or that you need, rather than something else because of your lifestyle. Let's be honest, there are many Me Too products out there, but just the fact that you may have different posology or different some other sort of you need to take this medication with food or fasting or this or that. The moment that you put AI and in an authentic manner with your lifestyle, that would by default change your adherence. It would by default change your outcomes of those chronic treatments. So yeah, I think that we are all trying to go there. I don't know when we will reach that destination, but definitely it's a matter of time until we get there.
Yeah, and at the same time, touching on what you said about the FDA and the agencies, from here, being dedicated to real world evidence, generating real world evidence using AI, which is our very specific area of expertise. we have the impression that the agencies are now, I would say, much more open and willing to deal with this type of approaches, and that now it's a matter of alignment. So it's not maybe anymore the situation where the industry is trying to push new methodologies, and then the agencies are just not paying attention to this. On the contrary, we see a lot of expertise also on the regulatory side of things, and we see all the guidelines talking about AI. You mentioned the idea that now you only need one trial and the rest can be supporting real world evidence. I don't know if you have the same impression I have, that things are also changing from the regulatory side of things.
I do, and it's not only a feeling. I can say that when I'm sitting down with FDA leadership and FDA head of divisions, that's not a feeling. I mean, they are really wanted to us to come with solutions and ideas for them to implement. So the answer is yes, 100%. They are more open than ever. I guess that there are some whys of why that is happening. One, and I will just touch upon like very high level because we can end up in a tricky situation here, is because of competition. You have USA, you have Europe, but you have China that are pushing for new medicines, Nacho. And let's be honest, if you have, I mean, we are not going to go through the statistics, but I mean, China 10 years ago got around 3 to 5% of new biological entities entering FDA. Today is more than 55%. So by definition, at least one of every 2 drugs that Americans will have in their bodies in the years to come will come originated from China. Same for Europeans, by the way. And that speed is not slowing down; it's only going up. So competition is also something that sometimes in our home country is not very well seen. But competition, a healthy competition, sparks human discovery. And in this particular case, the use of AI is much needed to accelerate these discoveries and bringing these medicines to patients. So that is one reason. So I guess that is not a willingness of making that happening, but it's a bit of a sheer brute force of making that happen. The other reason is because, as you know, someone that have been in this journey for many, many years, Nacho, AI today, it's much more powerful than 10, 15 years ago. So the chances that we have now to, I don't know, another example is side effects. So the way to make sure that we are in a timely manner disclosing the side effects in real world of our medications to the agencies, EMA, FDA, etc., is through every 6 months we submit all these bunch of data that we have from real world data, and then we go with agencies and say, look, we have 3 cases of this, 3 cases of that. Why would we have to go through this all manual exercise of submitting every 6 months what is going on in the world with our medications, approved medications, from a side effects and toxicity point of view? You know better than me, we have outstanding tools today to track every single patient in every single drug in live. In other words, agencies don't have to call me and say, send me the report of these last 6 months of whatever is going on with your drug in the real world. No, they have access one click away to that data. Therefore, they can monitor what the toxicity and side effects of those drugs are. In other words, do we have to, and we know that the phase registrational trials in general are a bit of an island versus the real world. In other words, you may have much or less side effects, especially toxicities and side effects in a dedicated trial versus in the real world because of the ecosystem of a phase 2 or 3 trial. And agencies are extremely composed of, okay, I will realize if the efficacy is as expected, but I will realize much more about the toxicity and side effects of that drug in real world. That is what I want to do as a regulatory agency. They don't need us for that now. They just should go and make sure that they have all those CRMs, ERPs from the different hospitals, ambulatorios, or whatever they are, the patients are. And they therefore can give us faster access to medications and to medicines, Nacho, with that type of monitoring. So if we go with that type of monitoring, you can have a slightly, I mean, again, scientific evidence as high as ever, but still faster approval because you don't need to showcase some sort of long-term duration carcinogenicity or some other stuff. You can have that live. The moment that you know as a regulatory agency that something is going on, you put a hold in that treatment. That is something that can happen today. It's not happening, but I'm sure that that one may happen in, very few time from now. And we will change the way that we approve medicines. We will change the way that we, as patients, are monitored. Of course, now we can enter in another debate, and we may not end up in there as of Big Brother and how much do we want you to be monitored. In my particular case, and I can only speak on my behalf, I would be willing to be monitored from a health point of view so that if something is going on, someone can pick up the phone and say, you're going through this, you may not even notice that, let's discuss. But that's my perception.
So would be I. Miguel, you're a world-class leader in pharma. I've followed you for many years, as you know. We have the same age and come from the same city in Spain. And maybe my last question to you would be, your astonishing career. I appreciate it, but what I appreciate the most is that you always were driven towards innovation and data. And every time we had a conversation around it, you were very much into it. So maybe my question is, how, for people listening to the podcast, how you help institutions or companies embrace technology? What is it that works for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. I don't consider myself anything of what you said, but really appreciate your words. No, look, I think that the reality is that the beauty of this world of healthcare in general is that you are extremely powerless on your own. And by your own, I mean, if you don't open yourself up to learn from the best, in this case, company like yours or many others, forget about it. There is no way that you can advance. Or you can advance way later than everybody else, and therefore you are dead in the waters before you want to do any type of business or decision-making process. I would say, though, that since I was working in this big pharma world or biotech world, is to surround myself with people that are way smarter than me in all the different niches of businesses or knowledge, and get partnership with them. So these partnership ideas, and again, if you think about the most successful pharma companies in the world, and I will not mention them, but I know CEOs, I know those CEOs, they are now deploying a lot of capital and a lot of time with companies that are in others, I mean, like NVIDIA's or ChatGPT, AI, excuse me, or Anthropic, or any other sort of companies like yours, Savannah. The companies that are doing those partnerships, not for the sake of putting a LinkedIn post, but for the sake of going through the deep science and moving the healthcare world into the next level, those companies in the next 20 years will be in the top 10 position. If you are not doing that in the next 10 years, you will be in the top 30 or 40, even if you are today in the top 10. I remember one of your talks, one of the first time that I met you, and you really astounded me with a graph of course, logarithmic approach of how innovations happen, and this little creepy, little by little improvement until suddenly you got an exponential curve. And then the singularity, as you mentioned, that they happen, and then everybody takes it for granted. Everybody takes it for granted, the fact that, yeah, of course, this was always like that. No, this was not like that 10 months ago, my friend. But you already get it for granted. And if you are not there, you're dead in the water. So what I try to do is, and again, I will not mention all the companies and partners that we have here in the US, is to surround ourselves with those companies that can really help us to navigate those uncertainties, and then support companies like yours who are extremely, conscious of what they can bring to society for many, many years. And again, it's easy to make something for 12 months. It's not easy to do something for 10 plus years and sustained. So that's my goal. My goal is to do that with the companies that can help us, because we pharma companies by our own, extremely powerless. We in today's world, we need companies that are helping us in that journey. And I would say, last but not least, we are all making here to support patients. That's because if you do that, that is way more relevant than thinking about the business. Business is a collateral effect of doing the right thing for patients. If you do the right thing for patients, the money will come. If you invert the order, this is not your business. This is not your place to be.
Thank you very much, Miguel. It was truly a big pleasure.
Thank you, Nacho. We stay in touch.